Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 Series Rescue the Rockies. And apologies that it's been several days since our last episode. Had a very long, very busy, very tiring week of work. It's Friday night now. Don't exactly know how long this episode is going to be. I think it's going to be a relatively short one since I'm exhausted at this point and would just prefer to go to bed. But as I said, I think it's been about 5 days since our last episode, so I wanted to at least keep things moving, given that we're likely getting increasingly close to OOTP 27. We finished up the last episode talking about some of the options as far as the international amateur free agent market, and that'll be our primary focus of this episode, but did want to check in on the free agent market as well. You'll remember there were kind of 4 positions that we had a little bit of uncertainty about heading into this offseason. We wanted to add a left-handed pitcher to the bullpen, which we did with the trade with the Royals for Mr. Ramirez. We were unsure what we were going to do at catcher. We ended up bringing back the Leon Hall platoon from a year ago. Felt like we had a spot in the infield and ultimately decided that even though we did trade away a little bit of infield depth to bring Mr. Ramirez on board, that we also had enough depth still in the organization that we could come up with 6 infielders for the 26-man roster relatively easily, particularly with some of the good young talent we've got in the organization. So it's really just one last spot that we're still thinking about trying to do something with, and that's a 4th or 5th outfielder, since we have moved on from our longtime center fielder, Anthony Pack Jr., this offseason. Been monitoring multiple guys. Pete Crow Armstrong, even though he's almost 39 years old, is probably the most interesting for what we need, because we'd love someone who could play center field for us. Still has outstanding speed. The bat, certainly not great at this point. Hit a .193 for the Cubs last year, and he's wrecked physically. The biggest issue, though, is that PCA at this point is looking for a 3-year contract at almost $16 million a year. We offered him a 1-year, $12 million deal, and he refused that. I don't think we're going to chase after him at this point. Not sure how strong the market for him is going to be. Another guy we're also looking at is Ron Davis. Don't like him quite as much because he's not as good defensively, particularly in center field. But he is much younger and healthier. But he's coming off of a rough year where he also hit below the Mendoza line, was basically a replacement level player. Davis at this point looking for 2 years at about $12 million a year. He is a guy, when we look at his ratings, think that he could be useful against right-handed pitching for us. But then we look at his batting splits from a year ago, and he hit a .98 in 258 at-bats against right-handed pitching. Though it's kind of weird that it says those are his 2041 batting splits, because it's 2041 right now. I guess when the game flips over into the new actual year, it doesn't get rid of last year's stats, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. A .98 batting average against righties and a .47 batting average against lefties. Doesn't seem like that should add up to a 199 average overall. Oh, but he played with 2 teams last year in the majors. I missed that he also had those 21 at-bats with the Angels when he hit well below 100, so that does make sense. Anywho, 2 years around $24 million doesn't really interest me, but I'm going to keep an eye on the markets for both Davis and PCA. Think that one of them potentially could be a 5th outfielder for us. But even though we've got the money right now, don't really want to make a commitment of more than a year to either of those players. And in a worst case scenario, feel like we can probably move one of our infielders to become a adequate corner outfielder for us. Doesn't help us with the issue at center field, potentially. Right now we're very reliant on Mike Castro remaining healthy there. But I just don't think that the prices for PCA or Davis are reasonable right now, so we're going to continue hoping that perhaps they get more reasonable. And we'll turn our attention now to the international amateur free agent pool. As we often do, got some good feedback from the Worldwide Scouting Department on what we should perhaps consider. So we'll take a look at the 5 players that generated some level of interest among the WWSD. All position players, that's probably the direction we'll go. And if we go for a big ticket item, probably need to offer them every penny that we've got right now, as the $5.1 million that our Rockies have available to spend is as little as any team in baseball. So hopefully just be aggressive from the start. Third baseman, Michihisa Ida, also known as the Sonic Kid, a switch-hitting third baseman. Pretty interesting looking bat and a really good personality. Not great defensively, but the switch hitter could definitely play first or third at the major league level. Doesn't really look like can play anywhere in the outfield except for left field, and you're not even going to like him there, at least if you care about defense. But the Sonic Kid was a recommendation of both DLL First Base 14, third choice of Raven Spawn 3 as somebody to consider. Ilda, not looking for a ton of money, so some of the interest in him with the Worldwide Scouting Department was generated by the prospect of bringing on board a potentially more diversified class than just one guy. Center fielder Luis Torres, also known as Kilowatt, was the second choice of Raven Spawn 3. Definitely a lot to like here. Durability, high adaptability and work ethic, a competent corner outfielder, and the gap power, home run power, and eye could all be excellent to outstanding if Kilowatt reaches his full potential. Do worry a bit about the contact and his ability to avoid strikeouts. However, the speed is nothing special, but certainly an interesting player to consider. Center fielder Gregorio Sour Mash Jack Galindo, recommendation from Dustin Durbin. Don't love the low baseball IQ, good range in the outfield, good speed, really good bunter for whatever that's worth. Not the greatest base running instincts right now, but not horrible, particularly with his stolen base ability. Potentially interesting contact hitter, potentially great gap power. The home run power looking average. The eye, however, looks like it could be solid as well. So certainly another interesting player to consider. Center fielder Raul Garcia was recommended by both DLL First Base 14 and Raven Spawn 3, who had him number 1 on his list. A lot to like with Shufflin' Phil also. Gap power and the home run power, both potentially excellent. The eye, not quite as good as Luis Torres, but potentially a better contact hitter than Torres, although he's also likely to strike out a lot. Decent speed, decent base running instincts, like the high work ethic and financial ambition, or the low financial ambition to go with that. Most popular guy for the Worldwide Scouting Department, at least in the number of votes, though, was the third baseman, Danny Big Game Bob, not Big Game Dan, Hernandez. right-handed hitting Panamanian third baseman was recommended by DLL First Base 14, Dustin Durbin, and Not My Four-Ply. Main concern raised about him was the extreme development risk. Very large chance that he won't meet his potential, but definitely a lot to like about him. The contact can be well above average. The gap power and the eye could both be outstanding. Home run power average. Great speed. Not a great looking infielder prospect. Another guy who he can play in left if you have to, but wouldn't really like it. Mixed personality, but the high adaptability and work ethic to me are bigger positives than the low loyalty and high financial ambition are negatives. So there's an interesting crew to consider this year. Some pretty potentially interesting hitters if these guys can reach their full potential. But that's always the big question, whether we'll be able to tap their full potential or not. And it ultimately came down to 3 players for me. I like Michihisa Ilda. Could definitely see us pivoting to him and perhaps even having to make him a full $5.1 million offer if we strike out on another player or two and he finds his market strong. But I think he can be a fallback option for us potentially. The other guy that is not on my short list is the center fielder Gregorio Galindo. I like Sour Mash Jack, but I don't love the low baseball IQ. And the other players I prefer just a little bit more. So that means our decision comes down to center fielder Raul Garcia. Pretty well balanced. Don't love the strikeouts, but I do love the fact that he's got decent speed to go with that potentially interesting gap power, like the high work ethic, and I do like his range in the outfield, even though his error and his arm ratings aren't all that great. Third baseman Danny Hernandez is really interesting, as I talked about, popular with the worldwide scouting department as well. Don't love the defense and don't love the extreme development risk. But certainly other than that, there's not a lot to dislike about Big Game Bob. And then last but not least, Luis Torres. Like the durability, like the high adaptability and work ethic. As we talked about, the profiles of Raul Garcia and Luis Torres are very similar when we compare them to one another. Both can have incredible gap power and home run power potential. The eye for Luis Torres a lot better, but the contact and the BABIP potential for Raul Garcia are potentially better. Taking a look at the defensive ratings for these two in the outfield, better range for Garcia. He's going to do a better job actually getting to the ball, but there's going to be some balls that we get to that he ends up booting that Luis Torres probably would have been able to handle okay. Back to the batting ratings, I do give Garcia an advantage with the much better speed and better base running ability. Do feel like that should allow him to take somewhat more advantage of the potentially outstanding gap power that he has compared to Torres. But they're very similar prospects, very similar players. Ultimately, we're going to try to bring Raul Garcia on board. We're also going to try to get a little bit greedy, since we're not in love with any of the prospects see if maybe we can get him signed with a $3.1 million offer right at the start, which would still leave us another $2 million if we wanted to push the envelope and try to get another player. I have a feeling that Shufflin' Phil is going to be pretty in demand, and we could get outbid by about 15 other teams before we even hear back from him and have to pivot. But since we're not saying that he's head and shoulders above some of the other prospects that are out there, we'll try to see if maybe we can fashion a 2 or 3 player class with a guy that we really like here. And Garcia says unless someone offers him a better deal, he'll sign with us, which isn't worth all that much. Our old buddy Ted Miller going to the Yankees for 2 years. $16.2 million deal, $8.1 million each of the next 2 years for our former designated hitter. And in very unsurprising news, Raul Garcia has come back, said he's looking for more money, and he already has an offer greater than the $5.1 million that we could have offered him. So going to pivot to Plan B at this point. And although I don't love the extreme development risk associated with Big Game Bob, Danny Hernandez, there's no question that if he does reach his full potential, that bat could be incredible. Now he is looking for more than anyone else at $4.2 million, or as much as anyone else. So it's possible that he's already gotten an offer that we can't even match at this point. Oh, it says he's looking for a $2.9 million signing bonus. So we're going to just offer him everything we've got at this point and see if perhaps we'll be able to get Big Game Bob locked up. If not, move on to Plan C. And Raul Garcia has ended up signing with the Reds, $6.2 million. So he got the max that anybody could get. Obviously, with how quickly that happened, I think even if we had offered him the $5.1 million to start, probably wouldn't have gotten him. Still waiting to hear more back from our friend, Mr. Hernandez. Still says he favors our offer. Both Ron Davis and PCA remain on the market. PCA, as he lingers more and more, his contract demand gets higher and higher, looking for 3 years at about $20 million a year at this point. Mentioned we did make that offer to him, 1 year, $12 million, which he didn't even think about, but certainly not going to offer him those type of years at that type of money, given where he is in his career at this point and the fact that we do want to maintain a little bit of contract flexibility going forward. And we've simmed ahead several days. Unfortunately, Danny Hernandez has come back to us saying that he's got a better deal than what we've proposed, although it sounds like the $5 million that the Braves have offered is exactly what our max was. But apparently he prefers Atlanta over Colorado. So back to the IAFA pool. And looks like it might be time to go to the guy that we thought could be our fallback option, Michihisa Ilda. Do like the balance of his bat and really like some of his personality traits. Says he's already got an offer for $2.6 million. So he's already getting more than twice what his initial demand was, given that the number of top-level players is certainly diminishing. We're going to offer Ilda every penny that we can, almost doubling what he says his current offer is. and see if we can lock up another guy that was reasonably popular with the worldwide scouting department as our third option. And Ilda's told us that he does like our offer. Danny Hernandez has ended up signing with the Braves. And he really did just prefer them to us because we offered him the exact same amount. And Hernandez chose to join the Atlanta Braves organization rather than the Colorado Rockies. And good news, the third baseman, Michihisa Ilda, now signed and with the organization, relatively young, barely 17 years old, the switch hitting potential first baseman slash third baseman, likely going to spend this entire year in our international complex. Maybe we'll give him an opportunity in the Dominican League about a year from now. As we said, really like the personality, think it's a good, potentially well-rounded bat. Don't love the defense and certainly don't like the speed at all. Took a couple of bigger shots trying to bring either Garcia or Hernandez on board. Struck out on both of them, so at least Ilda keeps us from making 3 outs in the inning and gives us an opportunity to have a pretty good prospect joining our organization. And as we get to the start of the preseason, our top potential option for the outfield, Pete Crow Armstrong, his patience paid off. The Nationals gave him a 3-year deal worth close to $55 million if he's able to vest for that third year. Just not numbers nor years that we were willing to go near, given that he's going to be 39 years old before the season gets underway. He's wrecked physically, and he's coming off a year where he hit a $193. As good as I think he could have been for us in a 4th or 5th outfielder role, spending $19 million a year for a wrecked 39-year-old 5th outfielder. Just not something I'm willing to do, even if it's just pretend OOTP money. But although we struck out on PCA, the benefit of waiting till the preseason has begun is that Ron Davis's demand is now much more reasonable. I think that the left-handed hitter could be a useful bat for us against right-handed pitching. Like his speed, like his youth and health compared to PCA. Don't love that he's just a guy, and maybe not even just a guy in terms of center field defense if we have to use him out there. But with the price that he is looking for at this point, and it's not even a guaranteed major league contract, we're actually not even going to mess around. We'll give him the $1.8 million if he makes the team. So we'll see if we can bring Davis into the organization, and with it being a minor league contract with major league options, if we decide we'd rather go with a young guy, maybe pivot from an infielder to an outfielder for that 5th outfielder spot, no harm, no foul for us in terms of spending any guaranteed money on Ron Davis. And Ron Davis has come back and said that he's potentially going to be signing with the Red Sox, who we, of course, faced off against in the World Series last year. Now looking for around $2.6 million a year. We'll pay him $2.7 if he's going to be in the majors. Seems like he might really prefer to be with the Red Sox, but guy was looking for 2 years at close to $12 million a year not that long ago. If we can just have him for a 1-year contract in a year that we've got money to spend without making a long-term commitment, I think there's a lot more that I would do in terms of being willing to increase what we're offering him if we need to. And we did get Ron Davis signed, so if he makes the major league team, we'll be spending $2.7 million on him next year, or this upcoming season, actually. Hopefully, he'll be productive for us if he does make the team. We did lose our longtime first baseman out of UVA and Ryan Stone this past off season, so we ensure that UVA remains represented on the Colorado Rockies roster here in 2041. And we've made it to the start of spring training. We've made a few offers to bring on some depth into the organization to some guys, experienced major leaguers who we've offered minor league contracts to. Still have 1 to 2 weeks to go in the development lab. So we're going to finish up the episode here. Next time around, we'll sim through spring training, sim through these long development lab programs, and then hopefully also have time to get through the shorter development lab programs. For some reason, the game had defaulted to a season start date of April 11th for us, which when we got to the preseason, we were able to move back to a much more reasonable April 4th. But it appears that there could be a quirk, and I'm hoping we'll have enough time to do the normal defense and speed-oriented programs. But it's possible that we may not, which would be a bit of a bummer. Looking at the development lab right now, not a lot of great news. Only Eric Schweitzer with secondary pitch improvement is on track. Mike Witherspoon is struggling with his secondary pitch improvement. Everybody else is frustrated, although Bear Barrel Davia close with his gap power, and Toco Lopez and Mario Manriquez in particular look like they're close to potentially being successful with their add pitch to arsenal and quality of contact programs respectively. So hopefully we'll get some good news from those guys over the next couple of weeks with those programs. Certainly would hope for more than 1 out of 8 to be successful. But we will find out the answers to those questions. And we'll also find out if we're able to stay healthy in spring training and who ends up making our 26-man roster for the 2041 season next time around. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.